Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Begin Again, night one of two. You don't have to come to both. If you want to, you can. You already paid for it. Uh, Super grateful, super glad that you decided to join us, that you want to be here. So I know people are making their way in. I'm gonna take a sip of water. I'm just gonna talk for a few minutes before I kick it to my talented friend Levi McAllister, who goes by Levi the Poet. But feeling really grateful, been looking forward to this, been working on this and toward this, but woke up excited about it. And then even in the last few hours, just been feeling grateful that we get to do it. Uh, yeah, I think, I don't know about you. I know I'm far from alone in this, but the new year, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, the possibility of change, the possibility of something different has resonated. And I have mixed thoughts and feelings, and we have plenty of time, and I have plenty of time to get into that. Uh, but I think if nothing else, maybe as a starting point, I can admit that part of me is fascinated, and I know that so many of us are, right? That there's something about the ball dropping in New York City in Times Square, that even if we're cynical, even if we don't buy into resolutions, even if we don't believe the hype, that maybe there are exceptions to that or moments that kind of break through, whether it's maybe you started feeling it today, second to last day of the year, or maybe you'll feel it a bit more tomorrow or, tomorrow night in the final hours. And maybe you find yourself taking inventory, kind of reflecting on this year and what it's been. Maybe you are a resolutions person. Maybe you're thinking about the year ahead and how you would like it to be different. What is within your control, how to maybe make it different or have some different experiences, set some goals, or maybe not. Maybe you've tried that or you just don't love that. Uh, but whatever brings you here, we are grateful. We are glad that you're here. I think with everything that we do, I think I speak for Levi and myself. I know it feels true for me, even in my years after to write Love on Her Arms. I feel like no matter what I set out to do, kind of end up ultimately also wanting to create things that are encouraging and wanting to create spaces that feel safe. And uh, no matter what else I get curious about, I think there's a part of me that just wants to be a bit of a hope factory that wants to try to encourage people who might be feeling alone or feeling sad or dealing with grief or depression. I know this time of year, the holidays are tough for a lot of people. I think, and this is not a brilliant original thought, but the holidays have a way of, I think, magnifying whatever we have or don't have, right? So I think we like the idea of, in a perfect world, this is a time when things slow down and we get to be close to those we love. And because of that, I think it highlights and points out when that scenario is not reality. It points out who is missing at the table, or who we wish was still in our life. And maybe we lost them uh, to a death. Maybe we lost them to a relationship that has ended or changed. So just want to acknowledge all of that, that as much as tonight is about New Year's, and that's kind of the way that we are attempting to be clever is, to kind of frame this around New Year's. And I love that we get to do it twice, that we get to do it in 2023, and come Tuesday we get to do it in 2024. But I think ultimately it's an attempt to talk about and think about and invite you into a conversation about change, about healing, about meaning, about what makes for a meaningful year, what makes for, I guess, if you could stack up a bunch of years that you feel good about, in theory, I'm literally thinking out loud, right? I suppose a bunch of meaningful years would make for a meaningful life. Uh, and so that's kind of the heart behind tonight. But again, thank you. Thanks for, I know there's a lot going on. People are traveling, there are other plans, other options, and it means a lot that you would want to spend your time and money to be here. And also want to acknowledge we're doing this on Zoom. I'm in my office in the house I rent in Florida, in Melbourne Beach, Florida. Levi is back in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he grew up. So, there's an element of I am talking to my computer. I wish we were in an old theater and we could hear each other and see each other. Even in the dark, I could hear the laughs or hope for some laughs. And afterward, we could, meet at the merch table. And then maybe we end up at the same late night diner or restaurant. I always get picked on because I say late night restaurant and it tends to be like Chili's or Applebee's, but we'll pretend it's like a cool indie mom and pop thing. Levi can speak to that. He probably has better taste. Uh, but yeah, just want to acknowledge that. So I want to, I don't know if these are shout outs, but it's a very DIY operation if you haven't picked up on that. So last night I was sending out the Zoom link to everyone who had bought a ticket by last night and just started to notice names and places, and it just made it human. It made it real for me. And so I'm not going to read all the names. Thankfully, there are enough people that have bought tickets that we can't do everybody. But uh, first off, I think there are 4 people joining us from the UK. So we are starting, like it's just past 7 p.m. in Florida, just past 5 p.m. in Albuquerque. It is just after midnight in the UK. So to Brian and Vicky joining us in Scotland or joining us from Scotland, super honored that you all decided to stay awake, and it sounds like you have some neighboring company. Annika is joining us from Hamburg, Germany. I hope I'm saying that right. We'll figure that out. Levi probably knows that. But then I just wrote down Olivia in Knoxville, Michelle in Bryan, Texas, Seth in Tulsa, my friend Julie in Eugene, Oregon, Mariah in Durham, North Carolina, Michelle lives in Palmer, Alaska, which is pretty awesome. If you haven't been to Alaska, go to Alaska. It lives up to the hype. Nick is an hour west of me in Longwood, Florida. I know how to say that. Longwood, Florida. Kari is in Saskatoon, in Canada. Alex in Syracuse, Lauren in Wilmington, Olivia in Knoxville, Michelle in Staten Island, Marcy in Manchester, New Hampshire. So I don't know, it made the whole thing feel human and real, and pretty cool that people are all across the country and even in other parts of the world, and that even though I'm sitting in sweatpants, I can't speak for Levi. I do know he has a sweatshirt on. Uh, we're all spread out, we're all separated, but I love the idea of trying to transcend some of that, and that something as simple and kind of silly and typically used for maybe boring work meetings, Zoom, that we get to use it to try to connect and to try to have a meaningful shared experience. So I know that the role I get to play in this is unique, and just want to express my gratitude for the 17th time before we get started. I'll leave it there for now and get to introduce a friend of mine. I've done a lot of different kinds of events over the years. I've been super privileged to spend time on the road. I think done events in all 50 states. Most of those were related to Write Love on Her Arms. It's taken me to other countries. I've done a lot online in recent years, even maybe using Zoom or using Google Teams. But in terms of hosting my own event and something that's not a small group conversation, something that's more of kind of a traditional speaking event. I've only done it one other time, and that was back in September during National Suicide Prevention Week for an event called Even Now, and was lucky enough to have Levi join me for that, and really loved being able to do it together. Really loved, sharing the space and getting to create something. He's a really good friend, but I'm also happy and proud to be a fan, and was really glad that he said yes when I invited him, when I asked if he wanted to do this. And also I knew he was traveling, and I knew that he certainly had an excuse if he wanted to say no. But he is with us this evening, and he'll be back on Tuesday. And again, or yeah, hopefully that's clear. But if you want to join us on Tuesday, you can. If you want to help spread the word, if you want to watch the recording, I'll send out the recording of this tomorrow. I'll send out Tuesday's recording on Wednesday, the 3rd. But if you have a good experience, our hope is that we can share this with a bunch of people. And even if people can't make it tonight, that maybe more folks would want to join us on Tuesday. For now, one more time, thank you for being here. And I'm excited and glad to be able to introduce Levi the Poet.
Thanks, Jamie. Can you hear me? We're going to make sure that I am hearable. I am wearing a sweatshirt. No, a sweater. I am wearing a sweater. You remember you guys remember in COVID when like businessmen would be on Zoom and then they'd stand up and they wouldn't be wearing any pants? I thought that'd be nice, but I decided also to wear pants. So I'm wearing pants that are sweats and a top that is sweats. Thanks for letting me be here. Thanks again, Jamie, for introducing me and for inviting me back. I chose, well, actually, before I get into any of that, there's also names that I recognize on here, and it's awesome. And I'm not going to go through and read them, but there's some names I haven't seen in a really long time. That's really nice. So thanks for joining in. I chose mostly poems that I haven't really shared that much before. There are a couple of folks who might have niched down over the years who will recognize some sections and little reminiscences. But in keeping with the theme of the event, I wanted to choose pieces and themes that to me represent moments and seasons of my own beginning agains, as well as maybe try to challenge myself to a kind of personal openness that's usually at the heart of these gatherings. So they're not necessarily recent, but I think that the beauty of poetry is found in its ability to speak to what is unspeakable in us. And so I'm not going to ruin that by trying to explain any of it. I would just encourage you, as much as you're able to, across computer screens, to allow the language to sing and dance with whatever it elicits in your own story and your own emotion, rather than attempting to analyze what any of it's about. That's usually where everything goes wrong anyways. There's a hero of mine named Thomas Merton. I want to read this quote in light of that. The more we persist in misunderstanding the phenomena of life, the more we analyze them out into strange finalities and complex purposes of our own, the more we involve ourselves in sadness, absurdity, and despair. But it does not matter much, because no despair of ours can alter the reality of things or stain the joy of the cosmic dance which is always there. And I was excited about this event because I thought that perhaps tonight can be a reminder of that for all of us. I think that other ways of saying begin again are come back to life, or risk, or forgive others and you too, trust, remember. And so these poems represent something of all of that to me. And in the spirit of New Year's, whether the calendar changing is a blessing or a curse or a haunt or an excitement, There's plenty of holidays in here, and clocks and endings and beginnings and longings and us's and them's and we's, and uh, the reality that we see on the news at the same time that we raise our toasts to one another in the weird paradox, to quote one of Jamie's recent favorite words, existence is. So I'll be lacing tonight's theme and the poetry that follows with the phrase begin again throughout, but I'm not going to really stop to ask for any weird silent Zoom applause, because it just is, it feels weird on a piece by piece basis. So sometimes it might signify the start of a new poem, sometimes not. Don't worry about that too much. Hopefully it just feels like something that you can enter into. And then to conclude my portion before giving this back to Jamie, I'll read a poem by one of my favorite writers of all time. His name's John O'Donohue, titled For a New Beginning. Sound all right? I can't hear you, so I'm gonna assume it sounds all right. So first, I have to tell you a story about this time in Mammoth, California. I don't know if any of you have ever been there before. I was 5, probably, and at the time, I stepped off of the porch of this house that my like 17,000 family members were renting, straight into a 6-foot deep pile of snow that I thought was solid ground. It was like the human version of those cat gifs, you know, where like little Gilbert, that was the name of my old cat, disappears over and over and over again, just face down in the white. 17 years removed, I like to think that I was just trying to have some alone time, you know, a little silent, introverted icicle. The next day, after my dad found my fingers poking out of a hole in the ground, I went sledding with my sister Bree down a hill that ended 6 feet above an asphalt parking lot. And they call that poor design. And inevitably, when it was my time to slide, I veered off course and straight toward someone's kid shield beneath, while my dad sprinted sideways and caught my stomach with his knee and knocked the wind out of me. 17 years removed, I like to think that I was breathtaking. And I wonder if Santa loved me as much as I did. When we laid out milk and cookies for Big Red, Bree wondered about his reality. And it's safe to say that reindeer fuel the first existential questions in a young person's life. And the clatter on the lawn never quiets. And it matters because bed springs don't ever really feel the same after that. It mattered most to my father, who always pointed out that his favorite decoration sat on the mantle, Santa's knees bent, bringing gifts to a child in a feeding trough. And maybe it was just too overwhelming to risk his children's forfeiture of the life of one for the death of the other. So it mostly made sense that once my best friend told me that he caught his parents stuffing his stockings, mine went through their own repentance process and confessed to being lifelong liars caught up in webs of pleasantries and deceit. My best friend and my dad, co-conspiring murderers with hands as red as the coat that they stole from Santa's poor, fat, naked body, wherever it is, and a truth as heavy as the cookies and milk that filled his stomach with coal-black magic. The trauma, the trauma of having lost Santa Claus at such a young age continues to haunt me well into my 30s. And I assume that somewhere out there, he and my dad are sitting in a pub, wondering why no one has ever left them beer and pretzels, but recognizing that if they had, it'd have been a lot harder to discern whether there were 1, 2, or 3 Levi McAllisters in Mammoth, California that year, and if any of them was naughty or nice. You remember having to begin again after you found out about Santa. All right, look, 10 minutes short of annihilation at a rest stop in Czechia over soggy chips and something advertised as a meat patty. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. A driver, 4 pints in, stands to leave, bumps his head on the television screen that we are all overdubbing with comedy to counter the bleak and bitter cold. He looks at us apologetically, but there's nothing to forgive. We're all just trying to keep warm. Somewhere across the world, just west of the Louisiana-Texas border, a driver passes an abandoned lot on his right, something from a horror movie, full to the brim with crazy-ass art, as advertised in blood red handwritten signage. Life-size nutcracker figurines and gigantic jack-in-the-boxes laced with the lingering rush of drinking and driving 2 states past where Mississippi, in all of her barrenness, still makes an allowance for your legal limits, and not obliging feels like the greater sin. These men, continents and cultures away from one another, and separated by water and context and babble, both open their eyes in the morning. Both revel in the thoughtless seconds between waking and realizing it. Both grasp for the warmth of mind that seems to flee from the rush of the day's beehive swarm and the queen's incessant demands for more. There are moments like good intentions that exist between sciatica, a steady buzz, and the shifts in his seat between lanes and ideas that don't fit, when the man, either of which, catches a glimpse of what could have been or what might be in his own respective country, which is to say, his body. It's just enough adrenaline to convince him that more of the same will eventually produce change, and or that something has got to give, and he's not sure what it is. Begin again. What happens in the Republican wilderness or the swamp ground double wides they pass by beneath skies pillowed in gray, where Jesus shares a billboard with the adult megastore whose patrons he saves. And some middleman owns both the lie and the call for truth hotline and leaves our drivers to discern which is which. And look, either way, he's getting paid. Sometimes double, if and when they opt for both. And mercy will be my plea. Luckily, there's a lot of that to go around out here too, where residents stack their lawns with car collections and small towns litter the in-betweens with mindsets to match their size. And that's okay. Besides, as they say, you don't know what you don't know. And anyway, it's the nature of knowledge that's the curse. Absolutes, he observes, are hard to come by. With so many roads to drive on, and so many midnights to count down to, and so many highway crossings, and so many roadside stands handing out compasses and trinkets for the year ahead, you'll absolutely need absolution no matter which you choose. And mercy will be my plea. So begin again, you broken record, and play the keys. The heart overflows. The mouth speaks. It was the Max Bemis summation that made me start to wonder about the end. And the Polaroid Caleb sent. The one he captured just after the ceremony there in the Lobo Theater 7 short, long years ago. The one where she was showing off her ring, freshly embedded, and her campfire eyes glowed the way they do on occasion. Like the time a sea of people lifted us off our feet at the Fillmore, at Under Oath in Denver, Colorado, familiar film reel clicking in regards to myself like a shot of epinephrine, needle drained straight into the vein of our one body, surging. And they burnt so bright that night. It's the doomsday smoke outside the car windows today, floating over I-5 just south of Grants Pass, just north of Redding, California. City on fire. I brought Dear Pianist back to the same coast where I wrote it over 8 years ago, like a testament to progress. It's not that. This year hasn't been not that, but there are shivers that creep in from time to time, whispering about spirals that don't end unless you put your foot down and make the change. I remember listening to the bell sound, lending permission. It happened on Market in San Francisco, December 2016, next to the ice skating rink that the city created for the holiday, and I slipped beneath the weight of knowing a time was coming when this too would melt away. It was Jonathan's magic wand. So succinct, it felt like direction that made me start to wonder about the end and whether I ever understood what that word meant or means, drug out like the slow peel of a Band-Aid atop the bleeding, still seeping out from underneath. Dear pianist, I love you more than you will ever know. I swear your smile saves my life. I swear your touch makes me whole. And there will be an end to the self-condemning lies that I have believed. But if that end is a full stop, the beginning is an ellipses. Circle round. You broken record, play the keys. The heart overflows. The mouth speaks. Begin again, she said to me. Once below a time, before the clock became such a heavy yoke around your neck, there lived a boy, not yet cloaked in shadow, not yet hallowing success and sweating timestamps, not yet hiding his light beneath bushels like likes and commerce and content and comparison. You were a flavor all your own. Salt crystal tasted exactly the way that you were made to dissolve on other people's tongues, to sting and heal your parents' wounds, to calcify and become seasoned. Not someone. You were born someone. It's inherent. You were born volcanic. You don't need to force eruptions to get other people to notice you, to validate your existence. You mountain. To me, you don't need to do anything. You just need to be. And I know how hard the being is to do. To breathe, to jackhammer beneath the concrete between your head and your heart, halfway down, where the trachea collapses every time you try to cough out another cliche about how you're okay. You're fine. Before the second hand began to tick away at your life, there was a girl. You've got to find her. Back before she'd put on color like a layer cake, painting over the face that her collaborators gave her, gorgeous tea doll knit together and still the core of herself before wind and should and sleet and marketing forced her to bundle up so tight, to go searching for fig leaves as if she needed to cover up her beauty, putting on identities like lace she fancied way back when she couldn't wait to grow up and look like mom. Matron saint of a child who forgot what it was like to be one, just like she did. Concocting significance in a myth titled Me. Mine. And ironically, each of these individuals became so in a hive mind. In hindsight, I always precedes death, precedes life, precedes death, precedes childlikeness, precedes we are all inherently dignified. Tell me which door to open. Tell me how to return to the place that I used to put my hope in. Do not be afraid to look inside and begin again, where I, in the spirit of liturgy, all galaxy-eyed and soul-grown, lit the final cut of her Palo Santo, set it beneath a mock adobe home, atop the counter, to chimney up from the kitchen island with the mustard yellow bar stools. I had to have this open floor plan. When the burning cooled, we thumbed crosses on one another's foreheads. The last taste of gentle beneath the Christmas lights we never took down. From dust to dust. I never knew a person could turn to ash so fast. A year removed, and I don't know what to give you. I didn't know what else I could possibly lose. Life pried my fingers open. Like, is it going to break them now too? Trust it. I stopped asking God why when I realized how tired I was of deferring responsibility. I don't doubt the goodness of the ground of being, tilling every dead thing back to life. Begin again. Tell me about reality. There are bombs on the television feeds in my pocket with live coverage of actual human beings weeping over their dead in between videos of inflatable air dancers twerking outside Taco Bell drive-thrus. And another assertion that God is in control. God damn, how addicted are we to that word, control? Like, if I can't have it, at least I can project my silhouette out into the heavens, redeem wish fulfillment. On the day my dream and I walked away from one another, I sat down in the morning sunlight next to a lavender farm along the Rio Grande in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and wrote in my journal, I think I'm going to stop worshiping a genie. And wept next to the fire pit and the passersby. Surrendered one of my not gods to a better glimpse. Mourned the years believing that sustenance came from worrying about it. That afternoon, I stood in our newly remodeled living room, empty as I was, staring out the back door and past the flagstone patio her dad and I laid and leveled to the planter beds where the garden was, dead. Aware of all I wanted to cultivate without the tools to escape my head. Like, kid, underneath every what if is what is. And there are realty signs outside, and I am losing all of it. Everything I ever needed right here, where it has always been. Where it has always been. And on most days, this woman in Ashland, where they scold you for walking your dog in the park, or in Nashville backyards, she wanted at least 15 minutes with grass against her skin, in her hair. 15 minutes with eyelids closed to the morning east, and a straw and barley greens. She wanted to touch the earth. She wanted to touch the chapel floor. She understood that the church door is a microcosm of the sanctuary she'd somersault through in the afternoon sunlight. Without disdaining the image, she did not cut off her limbs. She knew the ground was on fire with both sacredness and sacrilege, and held it in her hands and received it all as sacrament, and refused to close the curtains on her soul. No, she said. Let me see you. Let them watch. All they are is different parts of us. We'll teach them how to thank their fig leaves and take them off. And so we let the light in, despising the shame. Every night, when I look up at the sky, I remember looking down on it. The world ablaze with so many eyes telling me not to be afraid before everyone who could have held my hand the way Tree did, everyone who could have kept my body on the ground the way Matt laid on top of it, left. And this woman in a Carolina dive bar where the tender needed water, or in a bed in Bend, saw that the admonition didn't quite stick and held my gaze anyway. Co-regulating over FaceTime, over chicken parmesan, over salmon and John O'Donohue, and propped up with the last remaining pillows from some pandemic swept aisle at the local Target. I promise you, there are better ways to be alive. Even when you forget. Begin again. I'm trying different clothes on and practicing nakedness with fingers crossed between outfits. We are not simply made by God, but of their wisdom. And so I film myself on layering and explicit and acting like a zombie for no other reason that I wanted to risk believing that it really is possible to be both seen and loved at the same time. And pressed send. And I will never forget the way that this woman, on a splintered lifeguard stand by an ocean or across satellite signals, wanted me to come all the way alive and begin again. I know that there is an emptiness inside of some of us tonight, that these words never stop flailing into. If you can close your eyes and imagine yourself zooming out from the person terrified in the trust fall, like a photographer twisting her camera lens left so that the fear focus becomes a wide angle lens, I'd invite you to see the hand underneath your body, right there where it's always been. Beneath what if is what is. And in that place, lost does not exist. We've got layers of proof, texts memorized to combat the risk that being is, let alone beginning again. But I didn't think about defending God the day I was born. It was all just shock and awe. How deadly must birth feel? God, I forget. Probably something like being kicked out of a garden. One day last year, during lifespan integration, I wrung out my towel and pressed my feet into the floor. And when we got to the Lord on my timeline, he had mercy on me and offered the universe as a name instead. And I accepted it as already present in my heart, because the truth is that I do, in fact, think that the universe loves us. Call it learning how to speak in tongues. She gave me permission to be who I am, endured my shame and despised it, and counted me joy. Jesus is always resurrecting, and blood and water is always flowing from her side. We choose hells we know over heavens we don't. And I tattooed, "Don't sink," into the bottom of my hand years ago. Caleb had to saran wrap my fingers from becoming fists, and there's a sermon there. I'm sure of it. Ever since then, I've been a palm reader. Every morning, I light grocery store candles and let Mother Mary and her son flicker in front of eyelids that I close on purpose. There is an unbearable brightness in the luminous dark, and I will my hands back open and inhale the first half of God's name before breathing out his last. The carpet whale Hannah made for me swims beneath their feet, and I am getting imagination back, where deep cries out to deep. What does next year hold? Who knows? But I've got now and now and now right here with me for a new beginning. In out of the way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander. This beginning has been quietly forming, waiting for you to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled and you stepped out onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. Thanks. Jamie, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Thank you, man. Oh, thanks, Levi. I was worried I'd unmute and just be crying, which is okay. I've spent a lot of the last year crying on Zoom. It's been some really beautiful moments. So no shame in that. Uh, thank you to Levi for being here, for sharing his gift, his words, his life with us. As I mentioned, just super grateful and glad that he said yes to this invitation. As a public speaker, I suppose, even though I'm inside my house, I think this is public speaking. I tend to feel like at times a playlist on shuffle. Like I come into these not as prepared as you might imagine. I come in with a few ideas, a few stories that I want to tell, and I'm not sure about the order, and kind of get to see what happens. And I definitely feel that way tonight. So I made some notes. That's what I'm glancing at here. Uh, Before I jump in, want to acknowledge and say a couple things. I thanked Levi. Obviously, you got to see and hear Levi, and he'll be back for Q&A, which I will get to in a moment. I want to thank Catherine and Karis, who are helping behind the scenes, and they helped back at Even Now in September, back in September, and I've gotten to know both of these amazing women. Karis lives in Pennsylvania, Catherine lives in Ohio, and I've gotten to know them through the small group conversations, through the primarily the Sunday group that I led and was part of for all 12 months, or yeah, have led and been a part of for all 12 months of 2023, and it will continue into 2024. Catherine and I spent 11 months together in the Sunday group. Karis, I forget her number, but I think it was over 6 months, more than half the year. But just a huge fan of those two, and super grateful. You won't see or hear them tonight, but they are helping behind the scenes, and it means a lot to me. And it also just means a lot to have the moral support, like to get to spend a couple hours on Zoom with them before we got started. So thank you to Karis and Catherine. I mentioned Q&A. We are doing that. We did that back in September. We're doing that again tonight. I'm hoping it's pretty straightforward. Maybe you've done this or experienced this before, but that is a way that this can be interactive. It is a way that you can contribute. So throughout, whether you have already picked up on this, or even some of you may have already submitted questions, you can do that from now until the end. I believe it's at the bottom of your screen. There should be a Q&A button, and Karis and Catherine are helping us sort through those. You may also get a message from them individually, but would love to, we're going to get to Q&A, and that becomes a lot more interesting, a lot more lively if you ask questions. So please feel free. They can be heavy or light. They can be silly, serious. Obviously, if some of them relate to the new year, change, healing, resolutions, that would be good. But whatever you want to ask, you have the opportunity. So that's a note about Q&A. I did not know this until a few hours ago. This afternoon, I found out today is the 1 year anniversary of the death of Tanya Ingram. And Tanya was a friend of mine, another incredible spoken word poet like Levi. And we lost Tanya way too soon. And that was a year ago today. And I know we're a little ways into the event already, but want to dedicate this first night of Begin Again to her. She was a friend. She was a force. She was so incredibly gifted. She was a powerhouse on stage. I was introduced to her through Heavy and Light, through the To Write Love on Her Arms event, Heavy and Light, that was for a bunch of years my favorite thing, my favorite night of the year, flagship event for the organization, at first at the House of Blues in Orlando, which is a venue that I love. And when we won the $1 million grant over a decade ago, the American Giving Awards, we got to take Heavy and Light on the road. But I was first introduced to Tanya and her work, her poetry at Heavy and Light in Orlando. And she was just such a badass on stage, like just had so much magic and personality, and just she was so big on stage. And then when you met her off stage, she was quiet and soft spoken and just incredibly kind. And I know a lot of people that have paid attention to my work, whether it's through Heart Camp, that's the poster behind me, one of them, or through To Write Love on Our Arms. A lot of people learned about Tanya Ingram and maybe even got to meet Tanya somewhere along the way. And I miss her. I know a lot of people miss her. And so this happened to be a year since she passed away. So tonight is for Tanya Ingram. Some of you, actually kind of similar similar intro to this next part, the the three words, welcome to midnight, may be on your radar, especially if you've paid attention to me for a while or paid attention to Write Love on Our Arms for a while. That phrase, I guess, came to me over a decade ago, and I wrote a piece called Welcome to Midnight. First as a blog on the To Write Love on Our Arms website. It ended up in my book, If You Feel Too Much. And yeah, I checked a little while ago. I'm not positive on the year, but I know it was, I believe it was either 2011 or 2012. So it's been a minute. And maybe that was the beginning, at least of me putting words to it, or putting words to it in a public way that I recall. But it was maybe me first admitting that fascination with New Year's, right? With this moment, this countdown, this midnight moment that is like the pivotal moment, right? When one year gives its place to the next. And so I thought it would be cool to start my time, my talk, my portion by reading Welcome to Midnight. It may also just be my best, the closest I can get to feeling like Levi, like a cool poet. So this is Welcome to Midnight. Again, it's in my book, if you have it, page 112. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The ball drops and fireworks. Resolutions are made. People scream and people kiss. And is it possible to change? Is it really, truly possible to leave the past behind? Welcome to midnight. Another year comes to a close. Another year begins with a moment in between. Why the fuss? Why the fame and fireworks? Is it more than hype? More than something else to sell us? Is there something to this holiday? Something true inside it? Because isn't there something inside us that aches for change, dreams it to be possible, to let go, to hold on, to leave it behind, to start again, to be new? Is it possible? If you're reading this, if there's air in your lungs, then you're alive today, tonight, right now. And who can know how long we have here? And is it a gift? Was it ever a gift? Did that ever feel true, or could that one day feel true? Are there things to fight to live for? Moments and people, weddings and children, and all your different dreams. Love, is your life more than just your own? And are there broken things that you were made to fight to fix? Broken families, broken friends, injustice. Will you move for things that matter? Wouldn't it be nice if change took just a moment? Wouldn't it be nice if it were that easy? Midnight and we're new. Midnight and the past erased. Midnight and we're free. It seems to come slow. It seems to be a surgery. Forgiveness, healing, sobriety, letting go, starting over, beginning again. It seems to happen slowly over time. One day at a time, the choice made new each morning. Will you fight? Will you fight to be healthy? Will you fight to be free? Will you fight for your story? Will you fight to get the help you need? Change takes more than a moment, but maybe there's also something to this celebration of a moment, something to the way it speaks to us, something to the way we fear it and dream it to be true. Maybe it's the most honest moment of the year. It's possible to change. Welcome to midnight. Here's to the possibilities. Thanks for letting me read that. I'm gonna take a sip of water. I haven't read that in a bit. I didn't read it earlier today and was curious how it would feel. And yeah, I think, as is true of most things in life that are a decade old, we may come to feel differently, right? We may regret them, or we feel like we might choose different words, but that still resonates. Those words still resonate for me. And it means a lot. It feels good to get to share them. Let's see where we end up. We're gonna bounce around. I don't know what's about to happen, but we're doing it. There's a guitar behind me. There's a guitar in the corner. I believe it's a Martin. It's a Martin. I don't play it much, uh, but it means a lot to me. And it reminds me of another friend who passed away. My friend David Quo, who is one of my all-time favorite people. I dedicated my book to my family, to my parents, Joe and Janet, to my sisters, Jessica and Emily. And in addition, I dedicated my book to David Quo, who died but also lived. Those were the words I came up with, and I'm proud of those words. Uh, my friend David Quo died of brain cancer, and before that he lived, and before that I had the privilege of knowing him. And I ordered that guitar honestly a couple years ago around this time. I ordered it online. I was going through some heartache. I don't know if it's called a breakup when it's the end of a situationship, but for all intents and purposes, we will call it a breakup. It felt like a breakup, uh, situational breakup. I don't know. I don't know if there's a term for it yet, but I was sad. That's the short version. And I ordered this guitar, right? I was gonna have my like Bon Iver cabin winter, and I didn't open it. I didn't open this box, this big guitar box, for over a year. Uh, and then I was able to attach some meaning to the guitar. I was in Las Vegas with David shortly after meeting him. I knew him maybe the last few years. Maybe I don't even know if it was 5 years, but the last several years of his life. And shortly after meeting him, we went to Las Vegas, and he invited me, and he had a suite at the Wynn Hotel. I don't think he paid for it, or he got this amazing deal. He knew one of the managers. I know I didn't pay for it. I mean, it was like an apartment. It was a two-bedroom apartment inside the Wynn. It was amazing. And we had the most G-rated trip. Like all we did was go out to eat and order room service. And it was a great time with this new friend who became one of my closest friends and one of my all-time favorite people. And I saw U2 this year at Sphere, thanks to an invite from the couple that I mentioned, Brian and Vicky, who are up way past their bedtime watching in Scotland, joining us from Scotland. And Brian invited me to see U2 at Sphere in Las Vegas. One of, or not one of, my number one, my all-time favorite band. If you haven't seen Sphere, give it a Google. One of the best nights of my life, the best concert I ever expect to see. Certainly the best concert and concert experience. It was so much more than a concert, but just the most magical night. And they gave me a ticket. If I could get to Vegas, I could go with them, and it was just incredible. We were right up front near the stage, and we walked out of the show, and I wrote about this on Substack, but it was almost like being drunk. Like I'm not much of a drinker. I never have been, but just we were just like in awe, like what just happened, right? Just thousands, I don't know, almost 18,000 of us that just had this like experience that's hard to define. And so we all kind of stumble out of the Sphere into the Vegas streets and end up making a left and walking up to the strip to maybe get a car, get an Uber, get a taxi, or walk. We ended up just walking, and ended up walking by the Wynn. The Wynn Hotel is right by Sphere, and I thought of my friend David. David loved U2 as much as I do, maybe more. U2 was his all-time favorite band. He loved Where the Streets Have No Name. And I just thought about my friend. I thought about this magical night and wishing he could have been alive to experience it. Uh, and I came home and finally opened that guitar. I mean, it was close to 2 years, which is embarrassing, but the reason is the connection. David, that Vegas trip gave me some money. I think he gave me like $50 or $100 to gamble. I've never been a big gambler. I'm not advocating for it. But I ended up, it's the only time I've ever really, it's the only time I've ever won. I won $1,200. And the deal was I would buy a guitar. Like I would use this money for something cool. And so the deal was I would buy a guitar. And I didn't keep my end of it. I spent the money elsewhere. I don't know if I paid bills or what, but uh, I ended up years later buying that guitar. And then it took another while for me to open the box. And so now it reminds me of my friend David. It reminds me of seeing U2 at Sphere. And I think all of that was top of mind, not only because Brian and Vicky are here tonight or are watching with us or joining us. And obviously I noticed the guitar when I'm on Zoom. But tonight, the title, Begin Again, it comes from a U2 song, which you may or may not have known that. It comes from the U2 song New Year's Day, which I have a lot of favorite U2 songs, and I'm not alone in that. But I love New Year's Day, especially this time of year, and I was excited to name this event after that. Yeah, just I think I actually meant to look it up today and did not do that. So maybe I will by Tuesday, but I don't know the story of the song. I don't know the origin, but I know that when Bono, it's interesting because there's a bit of a contradiction because at one part uh, he sings "Nothing Changes" on New Year's Day in a very defiant kind of certain way. Nothing changes on New Year's Day, but then he also sings "I Will Begin Again" multiple times. I will begin again. And both have always stood out to me. And again, I know there are millions of people who could say the same. Sort of the defiance, the cynicism of, or whether it's cynical or not, just the maybe the realistic statement or simply the statement, nothing changes on New Year's Day. I relate to that. And yet when he sings, I will begin again, I feel that. I relate to that. And I think tonight is a bit, it's about both. It's about acknowledging both parts of the end of the year, the beginning of a new year, 2024, that we can be skeptical or we can admit our skepticism or realism. We can maybe call bullshit on some of the culture around New Year's resolutions and people who want to take our money to maybe help us achieve our goals, while maybe also admitting what I tried to speak to or write about in Welcome to Midnight, which is that something in me lights up, that something in me is still curious. And there's some sort of magic about that midnight moment and New Year's Eve and that transition to New Year's Day. There's something in me that still believes or wants to believe in a clean slate, even though I know it's not entirely realistic. But I am thankful that almost 44 years, but we'll say 43 because that's accurate. I have a birthday next month. 43 years into this life that I still have that wonder. And maybe you relate, whether I'm a lot older than you or younger than you. And maybe I assume if you're here, you relate a little bit, that there's something about New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, whether you like the term resolution, New Year's resolution, that there's something in us that wants to believe we can start again, begin again, we can heal, we can leave some things in 2023. And I think it's okay to be realistic. I think it's okay to be honest, and certainly to use life experience and to allow our life experience to color some of that. But if you're here, it suggests that you're open to the magic. You're open to the desire for change. Maybe you're open, quite simply, to hope. I've heard it said, and I've quoted it a bunch. The the quote being, "Hope is a commitment to the future." And maybe that fits in tonight as well. The idea that we don't know the future. We don't know next year. We don't know what we will gain, what we will lose. Maybe the most incredible news, right? For some of us, and I hope a bunch, maybe the best year of your life. And for other people, maybe a really hard year. We don't know what's ahead. But I like this idea of a definition of hope being a commitment to the future. That come what may, I'm in, come what may, regardless of circumstance, regardless of feelings or situationships, that I want to be here, that I will continue to be here. So maybe that's something to think about tonight and in the days ahead, this idea of hope as a commitment to the future, right? That we're not pretending next year is going to be perfect, or that we're going to achieve all our goals and everything is going to be different. But we will commit to keep going. We will commit to, for starters, to continue to live, to continue to stay alive and want to be healthy. And so that's a note on hope. I think some of this for me comes from a bit of a rude awakening to the fact that life, it doesn't, I hope I'm doing it right on your screen, but it doesn't just go like this. It doesn't just keep getting better. You might have seasons like that. But for a lot of us, and for the people I tend to spend time with and be around, and most of the people I know, it's not a constant upward trajectory where one year is just constantly better than the next. I spend a lot of time on Zoom, actually, with people who could say at least part of life has not gone the way they hoped it would, or they thought it would, or they wanted it to. And I put myself in that boat with them. I mentioned the rude awakening. Yeah, I think I had I was like a surf industry prodigy. Hurley hired me when I was 22 years old to be their sales rep for the state of Florida, and I was making good money and started to write Love on Her Arms by accident when I was 26. And it was just this, who would have thought, 1 in a million, 1 in a billion story that went viral and changed my life, and got to be a part of that for 15 years. And last couple of years have been hard. Leaving the organization I started has been hard. There's a lot of layers. We're not going to get into them tonight. Questions about ego, questions about identity. Who am I? Are my best days behind me? My best and biggest impact, is it all behind me? Do people care? Do people pay attention? Do people remember me, right? Just some really big questions, and some practical questions. Can I pay my bills? Quite literally, can I pay my rent? And so I think part of it is admitting the place that I've been living, which is, hey, that life doesn't always go the way we want it to. Life doesn't always go as we hope. I'm 43 and single. I've never been married. I don't have any kids. And my dream, to the point of it being an assumption from the time I was 12 years old on, was love. That's always been my biggest dream. And it has remained elusive. And we won't get into all of that tonight, but it's me admitting life has not entirely gone the way I would have hoped or even would have imagined or thought. And yet, in the midst of that, I remain committed to the future. My little dog is asleep. Gracie is asleep. Little 10-pound black Yorkie poo wearing a little bright pink sweater or sweatshirt, little hoodie today because it's cold in Florida, or cold by Florida standards. It's just her and I in this house. And for as long as that's the case, there's longing and there are moments of loneliness, but I want to keep going. I want to keep waking up, and I want to be grateful. I want to be honest. I don't want to be like toxic grateful or bullshit fake happy grateful, but I want to be grateful for this house, for my life, for my health, for my little dog who I adore, who sleeps against my back at night, and it's one of my favorite things in life. And so I think it's okay to be realistic. I think it's okay to be honest. It's okay to be disappointed. Uh, it's okay, and I think it's important to have healthy outlets, places, people, relationships, conversations where we can unpack and express our disappointment, our grief, our regret, our loneliness, our longing. Uh, I've gotten to experience some of that, certainly in friendships, at times within my family. I've gotten to experience it quite a lot here on Zoom over the last year in the small group conversations that I've had the privilege of leading, especially the Sunday group that led, or that carried on for all 12 months of 2023, which I did not see coming, and which has been one of the coolest, most beautiful, powerful things I've ever been a part of. And I'm really thankful for that. I follow the poet Andrea Gibson on Instagram. If you don't do that, you should. Andrea Gibson. And saw a video that they posted today. And Andrea is an incredible writer, incredible poet, often shares their words on Instagram, short videos that are so good, so powerful, beautiful. And this person has been diagnosed with incurable cancer, with terminal cancer, and shared a short story of going for a drive. May have even been the day they learned that their cancer was terminal, and mentioned that a drive, time in the car with their partner. I don't know if there's music or not, but something about being in the car tends to feel good. You could call that self-care, maybe. They went for a drive in a pretty place, it sounded like, and noticed that they weren't looking up. They weren't looking at the beauty around them. And Andrea's partner asked them, like, "Hey, what's up? Why you're not looking up?" And I wrote down this quote because I was so moved by it. Two parts. So the answer to why they were not looking at the beauty out the window: I was afraid to love what I might soon lose. I was afraid to love what I might soon lose. Goes on to say that they did look out the window. They did look up, called it maybe the bravest moment of their life. And this is the next part of the quote. I loved the world that I knew wouldn't always be mine. I loved the world that I knew wouldn't always be mine. And goes on to kind of ask the question that maybe this is not a unique experience because of terminal cancer, that maybe many of us, even most of us, avoid and miss out on a lot of good stuff, a lot of beauty, a lot of wonder, maybe even a lot of what we want, because we're afraid that we will eventually lose it. It will eventually fall apart. We will eventually have to let it go. I think about this with Gracie. Gracie's my first pet, my first animal as an adult. She'll be 5 in a couple days. And I get sad thinking about losing Gracie. And I know many of you have lost pets, even recently, some folks that I'm aware of. And I get sad and I get scared in advance for when that day will come. I hope I get 10, 15 years, but I don't know, right? We don't know. She ran out in the street. She ran out in a relatively busy road when she was a puppy. And it haunts me to this day, just how scary that was, being afraid that I would lose her. And I come back to that. I am afraid to lose this little best friend. And then, and that's real. Like that there's space for that. But then I remind myself, I maybe the best way to approach that is to embrace and not take for granted the days in between. Every day I get with this little creature, this little 10.5 pound dog who I adore, who seems to adore me, who beyond treats just wants to go where I go and be where I am. Also really loves my mom, loves Gracie, loves her grandma. And so I want to be aware that we don't have forever, that I don't have forever with Gracie. And I want to let that frame my days, to appreciate her while I can, while I have her, while we have this shared life together. I don't do it every night, but most nights I try to have a moment with her. She sleeps in the bed with me, and I sometimes I'll kind of get down and like get on my knees next to the bed. It's sounding dramatic as I say it, but she's very small, so she's short even when she's up on the bed. But I just try to have like a moment, and I'll say, thank you for being my puppy. And I started saying that when she was a puppy. But just like a moment at the end of the day to express my gratitude and to kind of say, hey, I see you and I love you and I'm thankful for you. Uh, Levi talked about what if versus what is, and that stood out to me, right? That maybe that relates to what I just said about Gracie. What if I lose her? What if I have to go back to life without her? Certainly, I've lost people, I've lost relationships, I've lost people to sickness, I've lost relationships that didn't last. I've been broken up with more than I've done the breaking up. But Levi offers us kind of this choice, what if and what is. And I don't want to be so fixated and afraid of what if that I lose sight of what is. Right? I'm aware of my disappointment. I'm aware of my hurt. I'm thankful for therapy. I'm thankful for my therapist or counselor. I want to have healthy places to bring the hard stuff and the things that I'm uncertain of, the things that I'm afraid of, the things that quite simply hurt, the things that make me sad. But I don't want to lose sight of what is. The people in my life, the people who love me, the people who want, want to know me, want to support me, believe in me, uh, regardless of how much attention I'm getting or when my last interview or award was, people that are not interested in what I do or what I've done, but simply who I am. And hopefully I get to return the favor and be in relationship with those folks, with the same folks. And hopefully I get to show up as a good friend. I think this time of year, it makes sense that we reflect, we look back, we look ahead, we take inventory, right? So maybe if that stood out to you, it's something else to think about. The year ahead, right? It's what if? What if things fall apart? What if the money runs out? What if this relationship doesn't last? What if I never find love? What if the tests come back and It's not good. But what is today. It's this moment, right? It's this breath. It's this night. The moment when you watch this recording, maybe. What is the water in here and the little dog asleep in the living room and our trip to Starbucks tomorrow morning, my friendship with Levi and Karis and Catherine, other friends who are watching. I want to keep what is top of mind. I lost a lot of time to trying to live in the future or the past. Doesn't work, right? A lot of time to fantasy, projecting, wondering, a lot of time with regret, with shame, mistakes. A lot of the work in counseling or therapy for me has been about what is about trying to be present. We hear it, right? I was familiar with the term, but I've been trying to do it, to live in this moment, this day. Obviously, we plan, we think about the future. There is a time for that. But I want to believe that life is always worth living, right? That was the even now idea. That was the even now message, possibility that life is worth living even now, no matter what your even now is, no matter what this year has been, no matter what 2024 holds, which we can't possibly know. To believe that life is worth living even now. And maybe tonight, not so different, to believe that we get to keep starting over. Whether January 1st means something to you or not, whether New Year's resolutions resonate or not. I think Levi and I share the hope. Levi certainly talked about it and wove it into his set. Share the hope that you would continue to begin again. Maybe you have some resolutions. Maybe you want to eat better. Maybe you want to exercise. Maybe you want to pick a hobby back up or prioritize a relationship. All of that's okay. I'm not against New Year's resolutions. But if you drop the ball or you don't follow through or you only make it 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months, I hope you believe that you can begin again. That is part of recovery, that is part of healing, that we get to keep trying. And the hope would be that that trying doesn't happen entirely alone, that we would allow ourselves to be loved and to be known, and that this beginning again and again and again would happen in the context of relationship. We would have some friends who walk alongside us and we get to walk alongside them, and we get to talk about these beginnings and we get to talk about these agains. We get to encourage one another. We get to cheer each other on. That's a lot of how, it's a lot of what happens in the Sunday group. It's how I've described it. It's how many of us have described it. One of the best things, the benefit, or what so many of us have loved about it is just people rooting for you, people believing the best in you and for you. Maybe they've only known you for 2 weeks. We go deep pretty quick. We connect pretty quick. I hope you have that. That this is not a commercial for my groups. I hope you have that. I hope you can find that. I hope you get to know and experience that feeling of people cheering for you, people believing the best of you, about you, for you, wanting that for you. And maybe there's accountability mixed in, maybe there's truth, constructive criticism. You get to navigate that, the degree of vulnerability and input that you welcome. But I hope you get to feel known. I think that's really the word that maybe we land on, is that as we move into next year, as we begin again on January 1st, and I have a birthday on the 24th, inevitably I will make mistakes and have ideas or goals that I fall short of. But I hope that as I begin again in the remaining day and few hours of 2023 in the year ahead, that I would not do that alone. It's funny, I had a thought coming into this. It's not that I'm for or against resolutions, New Year's resolutions. I think I'm just on such a connection kick. Goals are great. Goals are fine. New Year's resolutions are, that's okay. But I've gotten to witness a lot of change, especially in the small group conversations, especially in the Sunday group. And it has happened in the context of relationship, of consistency, and people being intentional. We show up at the same time every week, right? We know where to find each other, and we choose to be honest. We choose to be vulnerable. We choose to allow ourselves to be known. And we've gotten to encourage each other and tell each other the truth, tell each other when we mess up. And so I've gotten to walk with people and hear and see these stories of change, progress, healing, self-care, and came to believe that connection was a big part of it, that maybe connection is a huge part of how change actually happens. Real, sustainable, lasting, significant change. That maybe it realistically, we will have to start somewhere. We may have to start small. I've heard Miles, my friend Miles Adcox from Onsite, talks about even a 1% shift, right? A 1% change over time. At first is not a lot, but over time, as you change direction, even the tiniest bit, makes a big difference. And so I wonder if it's less about these huge goals, maybe this all or nothing. Maybe it's about starting somewhere and inviting people to take this journey with you. And I don't mean that they do exactly what you do. I just mean that you allow yourself to be known. One of my favorite things about the conversations we have on Sunday and in the groups in general, we talk about what we want. And I don't think in a selfish way, I think in an honest way. Like, we are told what we should want, right? We are told what we should buy, what we should like, what we should wear, how we should behave. It's always coming at us from people we know, from people we don't. We don't always, or maybe don't often, get asked what we want. What do you want? What do you want next year to be? What do you want your life to be? What do you want your friendships to look like? What do you want out of your romantic relationship, partnership? What do you want for your career? When was the last time you gave yourself the space, the freedom to go there? And not to just say it to yourself, though that still has value. I hope you get to say it to some other people who really care, who don't look away, they don't look at their phone. People who want to listen, they want to hear it, and they want to help you get there. That you would have those honest relationships that are made up of honest conversations. I want to read a story. I don't have a lot left, and I hope this lands. But I was really moved by a story recently, and it comes with I haven't shared this. It's funny. What I'm about to read, I shared on Instagram, and I was proud of it. The writing felt good, and the story meant and means a lot to me. But there's a part I left out. I was supposed to host a workshop a couple weeks ago, a workshop on creativity. I'm gonna take a sip of water. I was supposed to host a workshop on creativity 2 weekends ago, and ended up canceling because not enough people signed up. You don't have to feel sorry for me. I'm not, yeah, that's just the truth. 2 people signed up, Vicky, who's watching, and Amaris, who I believe is watching or will be watching at some point. So shout out and thank you to Vicky and Amaris for wanting to be part of this workshop. But I didn't get enough people to do it. It didn't make sense to see it through. It wouldn't have been a quality experience. We didn't have enough people to make it dynamic. And I know because thankfully, the first workshop I did the month before around public speaking, called All You Need Is Water, had a bunch more than 2 people. It was full and it was great and I loved it. But the second one it didn't work. It didn't happen. And I was disappointed. Like there were levels of disappointment. I touched on some of those insecurities and big questions of recent years. Right? Logically, you can imagine if you announce and promote a workshop and you intend to host a workshop, you hope that people sign up for your workshop. And I've been a part of a lot of success, like forever grateful for the things I've gotten to experience in my career, mountaintop moments, and who would have thought. But the workshop was not one of them. Didn't happen. But it allowed me to go to a funeral. Uh, 2 Saturdays ago. It allowed me to go to a funeral. I was not close to this man. I grew up in a neighborhood that I loved, a neighborhood 10 minutes south of where I live now, a place called Melbourne Shores. Melbourne Shores. Our Melbourne is named after the one in Australia, I believe. Pretty sure. Bunch of kids, a bunch of friends I grew up with. This man who passed away, it was one of the fathers in our neighborhood, one of the dads. So he was, I imagine in his 70s, my parents' age, died suddenly. Probably a heart attack. And I again wasn't close to Jack, who passed away, but I wanted to go because I wanted to. I knew the family growing up, and I knew a lot of people. I knew it would be a reunion for people I grew up with and people I knew in my childhood, and that was enough to show up. And I have 3 friends, Kyle, Josh, and Elliot. We all grew up on Cardinal Drive since we were kids, since elementary school. Still my friends today. Uh, Still love surfing, still love basketball. I don't think Kyle might. I don't know if he loves it as much as us, but we still talk and text about a lot of the things we talked in. Well, we didn't text back then, things we cared about when we were 12 and 13. I can't see it because I have like a mustache right now, but I have a scar right above my mouth from catching a football running full speed on Cardinal Drive. Josh threw the pass. I caught it, took a couple more steps, ran straight into Elliot's mailbox, knocked the mailbox to the ground, if you can imagine. Imagine taking out a mailbox with your face. I somehow did that. And I'm not a strong macho person, and I definitely was not when I was 12. But these are the characters from my childhood. It's funny, I thought about it the other day. I don't have any tattoos, but this scar, when you can see it, I love it like a tattoo. I hope if you have tattoos, you still love them. But for me, this funeral, it was a chance to reconnect with some of the characters from my story, to see those guys and some other people who I either don't see a lot or maybe had not seen. And I ended up seeing people I had not seen in a couple decades. I mentioned Kyle, Josh, and Elliot. We were the, Cardinal Drive crew. That was not our name. I am saying that for the first time. We all lived on Cardinal Drive in Melbourne Beach. Friends then, still friends today. And I got to see Kyle's mom, and I got to have a conversation with Kyle's mom. And I'm going to try to speed this up. When I was growing up, Kyle's parents were married, and they were such a cool couple. Just one of those couples that would be together forever. Different, but a great fit. Donna was social and warm and friendly and kind, and Rich was strong and quiet, but also kind. And they were a great team, a great partnership. And they ended up hearing that they eventually got a divorce years later, when the kids were adults. And of course, was sad to hear this news. And the previous time, about a year ago, I saw Kyle's mom. I got to talk to her about her ex-husband passing away, and their divorce was hard. And she shared with me that her ex-husband, Kyle's dad, was sick. He had been sick, and so they knew that that the end was coming. And she shared with me just that they were able to make peace, that there was some healing that took place. And it was, you could tell it meant a lot to her. And a year went by. I didn't see Kyle's mom until this funeral very recently. And so I want to read what I wrote about that day in a conversation that I had with my friend's mom. We all grew up on Cardinal Drive. When the friends you find as children through random luck and real estate are still your friends 30 years later, this is no small thing. Team Cardinal together again yesterday to remember and celebrate the life of Jack, a Riverside Drive husband, father, grandfather, Catholic mass and shots of rum, a slideshow where we saw Jack in his youth. It's so easy to forget that every person we know or see as old, they were also young, or maybe are instead of were. As Anne Lamott says, we are every age we've ever been. The slideshow played 3 times consecutively. It might even have been 4. When the pictures started over, no one stood or said a word. There was no need to name the rerun. Because where else would we go? Where else would I want to be? If ever a people or a place become your home for 13 years or just a season, what a gift to reunite and to return. 2 stories I will take away, each an instant treasure. I want to share the first, about a different loss and different family. This one from 1 year ago. A mother, now a grandmother, who we've all adored for decades, sat across from me and spoke of making peace with her ex-husband. In my youth, they were together. When she got to the part where on the day before he died, she said goodbye through FaceTime, my eyes filled up with tears. They had been separated first by choices and then pain, by time and new commitments. Death would add a greater distance. Yet somehow she found the strength to look into a telephone from 4 countries away before their final silence, to remind the dying man who broke her heart that he had also lived, and they had lived together and brought life into this world. And it made me think about how the love of your life might break your heart. Those odds are even good. If given the chance, on the day before the last day, would I be able to choose forgiveness, fill all the gaps with dignity, say goodbye with grace? What a gift to hear that story. What a gift to grow among them, among all the life I mentioned. And now I'm crying once again. Yesterday was beautiful. Cardinal Drive forever. Cardinal Drive and Melbourne Shores. I don't know how it lands with you because I'm talking to my computer, but it was a powerful moment for me, and it means a lot to be able to share it. And it made me wonder, what's a successful marriage? What's a successful life? That maybe it's not so simple, right? That maybe it's not so black and white. I was moved by this woman's strength in the midst of such a heavy moment, in the face of death, with someone who she had experienced a lot of pain with, a relationship she had to grieve. Just imagining all that was wrapped up in this final FaceTime from literally 4 countries away. And I'm not a person who says everything happens for a reason. I think a lot of things make no sense. I think a lot of things are unfair. But I think sometimes good comes from hard stuff. I was not happy that my workshop, 2 people signed up. but I was glad to sit with my friend's mom, who as an adult I can say is my friend. I was more than glad. I was moved, and I will always cherish that conversation and that story. And maybe what I'm getting at is both. What I'm getting at is this year has been a lot. It's been lots of different things. It's been really hard. It's been lonely at times. It's been sad at times. But it hasn't only been those things. It hasn't only been a bad year. It's both. Like there's been beauty, there's been good. I saw you too at Sphere with Brian and Vicky. Uh, I was at the Wiltern in Los Angeles on the final night of Switchfoot, celebrating 20 years of the beautiful letdown. An hour after the show, what I imagine would be this hectic LA night, kind of this like busy, as you can imagine, a California band, end of a tour, friends, family, managers, all sorts of people. The night looked really different. An hour after the show ended, it was literally the guys from the band. It was John, Tim, and Chad, myself, and my sister Emily, just sitting there, sitting on these couches in the green room, reflecting on 20 years. I've had the privilege of knowing those guys for more than 20 years, reflecting on our friendship, reflecting on 20 years of this album, their time as a band, the intersection of those things, our friendship, my memories of seeing them and knowing them. That happened this year. A lot of good happened this year. My dog sleeps against my back. We will wake up and I will put her little pink hoodie back on tomorrow and we will go to Starbucks. The year has been both and in between. Next year will very likely be both and in between. But I'm still alive. And you are still alive. And I don't know how long we get. I don't know how long I get. I don't know how long you get, how long we get with each other. I want to believe that it's a gift. I want to keep showing up for it. I want to keep embracing it, starting over, beginning again and again. I want to not be afraid to cry on Zoom and elsewhere. As Levi said, trying on different clothes, practicing nakedness. Maybe this is nakedness, and that's okay. I don't cry every day. I don't cry all the time. I don't always cry on the internet, but I'm alive. This means I'm alive, and you're here. I believe that, and you're alive. And if you cry tonight, tomorrow, 2023, 2024, you're alive. I hope you don't have to cry alone. I'm grateful that I know and believe I'm not alone in this moment, that I am aware that I am loved in the midst of disappointment, in the midst of pain, questions, regret, fear, paying rent. I am loved and life is worth living, and I get to keep going. I get to begin again. I'm going to leave you with something I read, something I also read today. I'm going to try to share the right amount and keep it short. She went public with this, so I hope this is okay to share and to read. My sister Emily, my baby sister. I have two sisters, Jessica and Emily. Emily is the youngest, and she has been through a lot. It's been a really hard few years. as her big brother, I've been really concerned at times. I've been afraid at times. My heart has broken for her. I've wanted to help and not known how. It's been really tough. She's been through a lot. She's doing better. She got a job recently. She's doing well. There's been a lot of healing. And she shared something on Instagram today, a few hours ago, 4 hours ago. I'm reading it now. And I wanna read it to you. It's a picture. I don't know if you can see. She's holding our nephew, Landon, one of our nephews, Landon and Declan. Landon is the older of the two. And this is what Emily wrote. So grateful for so much. It's been a hell of a few years, but for the people who showed up in it, my life literally depended, exists, and is what it is because of you. I don't know that I will ever understand the magnitude of what was done for me, but I do know that I don't need to. Love your people. Love them when it's impossible. Love them through the impossible. Otherwise, it's not love. Love is not a silent thing. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Not even Michael B. Jordan, which I realize makes no sense. It's an inside joke. I think it means our brother-in-law, Sean, really likes Michael B. Jordan, so that it's a reference to that. I was preparing a talk, thinking about what I wanted to say when I read those words, and it just put everything in perspective. I was like, this is life. This is the real stuff. This is everything. This means the world to me. She didn't know about, I don't think she was doing that because of Begin Again. I don't think she knew that Tanya Ingram passed away a year ago. But she decided to announce that she is alive today. She decided to share that she is alive and grateful today. On a day when I'm aware of death, on a day when, on the anniversary of someone who passed away, of Tanya's life, at least here, ending a year ago. Life is both, right? Death and life, heartache and miracles, breakups, and maybe someday, hopefully, falling in love again. Really tragic news, really impossible circumstances, and seeing your favorite band at the most incredible venue and getting to be there with people who care about you and people who you care about. Life is both and in between. This year has been, next year probably will be. I hope you know, I hope you believe that you are loved. I hope you will allow yourself to be known. Not really sure about resolutions, but I hope you will pursue connection. I hope you will pursue vulnerability. I hope you will pursue friendship. I hope you will give some people the enormous privilege of knowing you in the year ahead. I hope that you and I, Levi, Karis, Catherine, Brian, and Vicky, the names I read earlier, my mom, my sisters, I hope that we will continue to show up, and I hope we will continue to begin again.